Okay, so get this. When you think about places with internet shutdowns, you probably picture, what, like conflict zones.
Right. Yeah, makes sense.
Well, the reality is a little different. The country leading the pack in internet blackouts, India.
It's true, and it's been a growing concern for a while now.
And that's why we're doing this deep dive. We're talking about why a country like India is resorting to this so much. We'll look at it globally and talk about the real-life impacts of being cut off.
Right, because it's not just an inconvenience,
Yep.
There are real consequences.
Absolutely.
Uh,
So when we say India leads in internet shutdowns, where's that information even coming from?
So there's this digital rights group, Access Now. They keep tabs on internet freedom globally, and they've been raising flags about this trend in India for a while.
Okay, so Access Now is like the watchdog, making sure everyone knows what's going on.
Exactly. And their data is pretty alarming. It's not just a few isolated incidents, it's a pattern.
And the reasons for these shutdowns in India, what's the deal with that?
It's actually all over the map, which is interesting. Sometimes it's about maintaining order during protests, like the ones about the Citizenship Amendment Act a while back, or even those massive farmer protests.
Right, those were huge.
And then there are other times when they shut down the internet to, get this, prevent cheating on exams.
Seriously. Shutting down the whole internet because some kids might be sneaking answers
Yeah.
seems a bit extreme.
You'd think so, right?
Yeah.
But it highlights the range of reasons and how sometimes they seem a bit disproportionate to the issue at hand.
So how do these reasons stack up globally? What are other countries saying?
Well, a lot of it revolves around security concerns,
Hmm.
right? Public safety, that kind of thing. Which on the surface sounds
Understandable.
sure, but the UN, they see it differently. They're pretty clear. Internet access, it's a basic human right.
Like up there with free speech and all that?
Exactly. The UN argues that cutting it off, even temporarily, limits access to information, education, work, basically all the things people need.
It's like this whole digital world we live in. You
Mhm.
cut off the internet, you're cutting people off from essential services.
And opportunities. So while some countries might say it's about safety, the UN's urging everyone to slow down to make sure shutdowns are truly a last resort, proportionate, and for the shortest possible time.
Makes sense. So we've talked about China and Russia before. They're known for censorship and control. I guess they're right up there with India.
They definitely have their own issues, no question. But India's situation is different. We're talking about the world's largest democracy frequently shutting down the internet. It raises eyebrows for sure.
Yeah, it seems like a contradiction. Democracy, freedom, but also silence.
It's a bit jarring, right? And to put it into perspective, remember back in 2023, 2022, Myanmar, Ukraine, they were dealing with some serious unrest.
Absolutely.
But even with all that, India still had way more shutdowns.
Wow. Okay, so it's not just about the reasons, it's how often it's happening.
Exactly. And that brings us to a really stark example, Jammu and Kashmir.
That's been in the news for years. What's the situation there?
So back in 2019, they had this internet blackout that lasted for, get this, 552 days straight.
No internet for over a year. That's insane.
It's a world record. And while there's obviously a lot going on politically in that region, it's a prime example of how these shutdowns can be really extreme and long-lasting.
It's easy to hear internet shutdown and be like, okay, so I can't check social media for a bit, no big deal. But it's way bigger than that, right?
Oh, absolutely. Think about it. No internet means no working from home, no online classes, not even a quick video call with family. And that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Right, like what about emergencies? Or people who rely on the internet for healthcare?
Exactly. Telemedicine, emergency services, getting legal help, all of that relies on the internet these days. These shutdowns have huge ripple effects, especially as we become more and more digitally connected.
It makes you think, what are we willing to give up in the name of security? And where do we draw the line? It's a tough question, right? Because we want safety, but not at the cost of our basic freedoms.
Exactly. And that's the conversation we need to be having. How do we find that balance? Because the digital world is only getting bigger, more important.
It's like food for thought,
Yeah.
As we wrap this up, I think the big takeaway is internet freedom is fragile, even in democracies.
Mhm.
And it's something we need to stay aware of, talk about, and fight for.
Yeah.
Because who knows what the world will look like if we don't.